Doug was a straight A plus kid at Flint Ridge Prep, just excelling. He had already read through the headmaster's senior reading list. The teachers loved him. However, after eighth grade going into ninth, I think some of his issues, and particularly probably the obsessive compulsive disorder element, really surfaced. I mean, it was to the point where he couldn't turn anything in on time because it had to be perfect.
Yeah. My previous school was just way too intense. There was too much pressure. The environment was just all about, you have to do well in this school or you are not going to be able to succeed in life at all. And there was just too much pressure, just too much focus on things that, weren't really helping me learn, and I just didn't do well there.
Doug was having a particularly bad day, and the dean called me and said, come pick him up. He's, in my office and he's not able to go to class. And I took him to a friend who was a child psychologist. And when she came out after speaking with him, she said, do you have to take him back? And I said, no, we're looking to you for guidance. Tell us what would be best. And she just said, quite frankly, get him out of there. So we started our Christmas vacation very early that December and didn't know after the break where we would send him. And it was hard because, Bob would say, well, why can't you home teach him? And it's hard to talk about. But, I needed to be his mom. And I said, no, even though I'm a teacher, I really need to keep that special providence of a relationship with him. So we needed to find other people to work with him. So Bob found Bridges on the SENG website.
Bridges was great because, they definitely let me work with my strengths, so the things I was interested in, they really pushed me forward. When I came into Bridges, I was in ninth grade, but they put me in a 12th grade English class, which was just, wonderful. And, I always got extra help with the math, which I wasn't so good at. I got to retake algebra twice.
And, you never know, just when you think as a parent, you've got one obstacle conquered, something else erupts. And he had been paired with a senior for an English project. And at first he was very excited about it, but then he was worried because he couldn't guarantee that this other partner was going to bring his best work to the project. So then one morning he came downstairs and he'd had trouble sleeping and he said, I don't mean to alarm you, but have you got a tranquilizer? So, of course, as a parent, I took a deep breath and I said, no, but tell me what you're experiencing and we'll get you what you need.
I, always had like a little bit of OCD as a kid, but it was very, very minor. But then right at the end of 10th grade, I had just a lot of things kind of accumulated, and the last 2 years had been, pretty stressful. And I just, I like to say kind of I lost a year because I don't really even remember a whole lot of 11th grade. And it was just kind of this great big, OCD blur.
Fortunately, there's an OCD specialist, an adolescent specialist in the area, and Douglas respected him. And he worked very, very hard with this gentleman for a good period of time. And with proper medication, he was able to manage the obsessive thoughts.
I took another year. It's funny, like the amount of work I had to do to finish up, I probably could have done it in under a month if I had been, really motivated, but I took my time with it, and I finished it right up before it would have been a year mark.
From a social emotional standpoint, I knew the great reward that Doug would receive by going to college. And I wanted that for him. But it was not his path, and he was adamant. We couldn't even bring up the C word.
That anxiety was there. That had probably been instilled in me at my earlier school because, there the whole mindset is like, if you don't get, like a 4 whatever GPA it is, and if you don't do incredible, and if you don't follow all these road marks, you're not going to be successful. You're going to fail. And then, after I left high school and I realized I wanted to be a programmer, I realized I didn't really need to go to school for that. I could just teach myself. And so many people were like, oh, you're not going to do it. You're never going to be as good as if you'd gone to college. You won't be able to get a job. You're just going to fail.
I had to bite my tongue and shut my mouth and trust. And that, it was the hardest thing for me. And, there's never been any wasted time with Doug. He would sit very casually here in the kitchen with his laptop, always appearing very low-key and casual. And I'd say, well, what are you doing? And he'd say, oh, I need to learn a new computer language. So I'm taking, what was it, C plus or Python? I don't know. Pick a different computer language, and he was learning it. And then he said, hey, I've noticed that there are a couple of computer clubs over at Caltech. I'm thinking about walking across the street and checking out those computer clubs.
I was going to a Linux user group, like a geeky programmer kind of thing, right at Caltech, just a block away, so I could walk there, and it was great. And one of the members, emailed out, so he's looking for Python developers, and I said, well, I don't have enough experience to just take the job, but I'd love like an internship, and it just kind of all rolled on from there.
Well, he got the internship, and a month later, he was offered a full-time position, and he had maybe by that time just turned 18, I think. So that year of percolating was for him preparation for setting himself up for the real world. And so when you look at it from a parent's point of view, you're worried, you want the academic strong and you want the social emotional balanced out. And all of a sudden we started to see where the asynchrony was, where he might have been a little immature. All of a sudden things were starting to balance out, and he was doing age-appropriate things, making age-appropriate decisions, wanting to have those age-appropriate experiences. He was just doing them differently. And then through a Bridges friend, he was introduced to an inventor who wanted to build a robotic fish. So we loaded him up and watched him drive away to San Jose.
It was a really good experience. I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot as a programmer. I learned a lot of technical skills. I learned a lot about the way kind of whole startups operate, especially when they're being run by people who don't really have business backgrounds. But unfortunately, their funding situation wasn't quite what they thought it would be. And so after a couple months, I had to depart.
And this is when, I thought, okay, we're going to have that come to reality conversation, and maybe this is the time you think about going to college, because once again, I can't release that idea. And so on Christmas Eve, he sent out his resume on a few sites that I'm not sure where it was, but a few technical sites. And by Christmas morning, he had 4 invitations or requests to meet by recruiters.
And eventually I ended up working at Google.
Can you explain what he's doing there?
I have no idea. I've asked him. It's like talking to another language.
He finds. Well, I keep trying to remember this.
Doing network operations. So Google has a very large network. A lot of things go wrong. So I help write tools that keep track of what is going wrong in their network. And engineers from around the world use my tool, and they use it to fix problems with the network.
I think he's a spy, really. I think he tells Kim one thing and me another.
Well, he's been telling me a lot my whole life. So,
What advice would you give to kids as they're, in 11th grade and maybe thinking, gee, maybe I don't want to go to college,
Well, and it's interesting. I have had talks with this to actual students who are at that point. They're debating whether or not to go to college. I would say that no experience is going to be all good or all bad. It might, at the end of the day, be something you need. It might be something you don't need. If what you think you want to do is something that doesn't require college, then, to be honest, it probably doesn't. But what you will get from college is you'll probably get a lot of amazing friends, a lot of amazing people, and you absolutely will learn things. And some of us are just lucky that what we want to do doesn't really require a college education. You can be self-taught. And I would say, if you don't need it, college certainly comes with a lot of baggage. A lot of debt. It's 4 years. You have to struggle through a lot of general ed stuff. But certainly don't discount it. I think that not going to college was the right thing, but there are parts of it that I miss, and that would have been nice experiences to have.
With Doug, anxiety was gasoline on a fire. So, and these kids tend, at least from what I can observe, they tend to put more pressure on them than any parent. They feel worse about the fact that they can't get something in on time than any parent feels. And then you pile on them. It just doesn't work. Just let it go. It'll happen. Trust it. And I think that gap year, Doug learned more about himself, trusting himself that, hey, this is going to work out okay, than he would have if he'd been rammed into freshman year at some college somewhere. I'm so glad he stayed home that year.
very true.